water and sanitation, but they have since discontinued that service. We have sanitized public spaces as we were directed by the Minister of Cooperative, including our offices. We are now on level 3, and we are now operating in full capacity, Chair. We have suspended our credit policy in particular on disconnecting the people that are not able to pay, and as such, we have incurred losses in terms of revenue collection. We are now collecting at 80% as of the 30th of April. We have intervened by providing food vouchers for 40,000 households in the city, worth 750 voucher per household, targeting 800 households per ward. Now, what we are engaged in is the building of a 200-bed quarantine site, as I've already indicated to you, Chair, that our people are residing in high-density areas, and that the issue of self-quarantine is a bit of a problem. But then we are waiting for Treasury approval so that we can use the USDG for that purpose. So this is where we are insofar as building of the quarantine sites. There are other services that we have extended to the rural communities, like the extension of grave digging and backfilling of graves to the rural communities, which we did not have before. We now moved out of the use of picks and shovels for digging and backfilling of graves in the rural communities. We have a backlog in terms of testing, given the fact that that is led by the National Department of Health. But generally, in the townships, we have behavior where sometimes our people do not take the existence of coronavirus seriously. And it's a challenge that we must overcome if we are to reverse the scourge. In terms of the COVID-19 structural arrangement, we have a COVID-19 Metro Council, which is chaired by myself, and then we have a COVID-19 Command Center, which is chaired by the city manager. That one sits 2 times a week, and the one that I chair sits once a week on Tuesdays. We have taken a decision that in our Command Council that we are going to develop ward-based rapid response teams chaired by the councillors and all stakeholders at the ward level. Our intention, Chair, is to ensure that people take responsibility for their at the ward level, but bringing in local clinics, local police stations, the churches, and the NPOs that are operating in that space. Insofar as revenue collection, Chair, as I've indicated to you, if you look at slide 3, you look at collection per service. If you look at slide 3, in terms of electricity, the net billing is higher than the payments received. Now, in March, we were at 87.27%. In April, we're on 86.87%. On the next slide, Chair, is the billing per service on refuse. We are now at 78.53%. We were at 78% in March. This is where the changes started. Remember, our projections are 92.5%. So we're far less than that in the last 2 months. And all the following slides are showing collection rate per service. The next one deals with sewage. The next one deals with water. The numbers are there. So, as well as the next slide on the projected under collection share, the estimated shortfall on electricity in rand terms is 154,396,000.
Executive Mayor?
Yes, Chair. Yes, Chair.
Andile. How possible is it for you to load the presentation so that everybody can follow the executive mayor?
I'm loading it, Chair.
You are loading it, ne?
Yes.
The executive mayor will advise you on which slide is he now. Don't load the old one.
The new one.
Yes, but
Okay.
it was there. What happened?
So this
Scroll
is the
down.
Yeah.
Executive mayor, can you assist Andile where to go? Which
No,
page
Chair,
are you?
this is the this is the the report of the Command Council. This is not what I'm reporting at. I'm reporting on the Buffalo City's response to COVID-19, not on this one, Chair.
Okay.
This is an additional information to look
it's
into
your
in terms of.
preamble.
Yes,
It's
Chair.
your preamble. The executive mayor's introductory remarks. Okay, to the presentation. Proceed. Is this the one?
15 minutes.
Chair, can I ask clarity? Are we still going to get someone presenting the report? Because
yes, but you must remember he has 15 minutes. I don't know how many minutes is he sharing with somebody who's supposed to present. Executive Mayor? Executive Mayor?
Yes, Chair. Yes, Chair.
Proceed.
Chair.
Sure.
Do you hear me, Chair?
Yes,
Okay.
I can hear you. Proceed.
We are on slide 9. We are on slide 9, Chair, where we are presenting the financial implications. The financial implications in rand terms, Chair.
Okay.
On slide 9, we're saying.
Colleagues, before that, colleagues, is the presentation of the first presentation you got and studied. That's what he's dealing with now.
Okay, no, it's fine. We must continue.
Sure.
Thank you, Chair. in rand terms, Chair, we are estimating a collection shortfall based on billing of 154,396,000 on electricity. On refuse, we are estimating a collection shortfall of 72 million. Is there, Chair? On the next slide is an estimated collection shortfall based on billing on property rates is 197,999,000. On sewage is the same, 70 million estimated shortfall. On water, 235 million estimated shortfall. So, Chair, the last slide is that slide 17. We suspended all credit control actions, disconnections, and complete blocking during the lockdown period. Businesses and residential property owners will be allowed to make payment arrangements to pay their accounts over the agreed number of months when conditions change. This will be assessed on a case-by-case basis. Interest will not be charged and no credit control actions will be instituted for the duration and adherence of the payment arrangement. Property owners who have lost their employment at this time of crisis and now qualify for indigent support in terms of Section 12 of our indigent support policy are encouraged to apply. Senior citizens whose circumstances changed and now qualify for pensioners rebates are also encouraged to apply. Now, the assistance required, Chair, is the finalization of the guidelines for the allocation of the 20 billion to municipalities as promised by Cooperative. The swift allocation of the 20 billion disaster funding from national government to municipalities and the flexibility on the use of conditional grants for COVID-19 related interventions. Thank you, Chair. Can I hand over to our acting city manager to summarize the program of the city in terms of the command council presentation?
Before that, Executive Mayor, where is your city manager? Not the acting. Where is the city manager?
He's on sick leave, Chair. He has an eye operation.
Okay, we wanted to understand that.
Yes,
Thanks.
he has an eye operation, Chair.
Sure.
Thank
Over
you.
to you, acting city manager.
Evening, Chair, and evening to all the members. If you can flight the presentation, Chair, of the Command Council. Okay, next one. Chair, in supporting the Command Council, we have established work streams. The work streams that we've established is the health, safety, and security, the infrastructure service and public works, the municipal services. We've got the economic and social development, logistics, communication, and legal. All of these work streams, Chair, are multidisciplinary. They're made up of all the departments, both national, provincial, and at a local level, and all other stakeholders within the metro. And they present their report on a weekly basis to the Command Council chaired by the mayor. All right, if you can proceed. The first one is the health and safety. And as you will see there, they deal with law enforcement, SAPS, traffic, the defense force, the district health, municipal services, disaster management, and fire and rescue. Next. Chair, I'm going to try, this is quite a long presentation, so with the limited time, I'm going to move quite fast and maybe even skip some of the slides. Now, this work stream, you'll see they deal with all the incidents, so we can, and on your left-hand side, you'll see the dates, like traffic offenses were 73, law enforcement offenses 39, SAPS 92, and so on. So in total, we had 211 for that period of 29th May. And by 5th of the 6th, you'll see we had almost 200 incidents in the metro. Can move. These are the arrests, the SAP arrests executed for various offenses within the period from the 29th to the 7th. And you'll see in King Williamstown, East London, Dunsany. Those are the numbers there. So if you can move, past the slide. These are the operational areas. These are the stats for the period. For example, 492 vehicles were stopped, and it goes on to the persons searched. 98 ATM banks that were visited. So I will just pass that one. And then these are the areas. Yeah, okay. If you can just stick on that one. For example, in addition to the above, the traffic and law enforcement executed hawkers that were removed, vehicles impounded, various prosecutions, illegal electricity, speeding cases. We had 6,229. The arrests that were made and the vehicles that were suspended, 19. Okay, if you can go on. Okay, if you can go, yeah, these are the illegal electrical disconnections in our area. So the stats are there, so I won't go through each one. As I said, it's a long presentation. You can go on. Okay, then land invasion. We had a number of land invasions, and we know we cannot evict people during this time, but we also found that people take advantage during this time as well and invade the land. Law enforcement service attended a land invasion in Reaston, so that's the details of that. The department who were there were informed TLB would be required to demolish these shacks because the invasion took place while COVID was in place as well. So if you can pass that one on the land invasions. Chair, and these are the law enforcement officers arrested one person, and these are the contraventions, mostly dealing with the cigarettes. It gives all the details there, so we can pass on that. Okay, these are the unrest where we had the community burning tires on the N2 in one of our areas in Newlands and Mount Road. The law enforcement officers warned 6 public members for drinking in public in our area of Greenfields. You can pass that. That was the drinking in public. And law enforcement services monitored social distancing at various SASA points. I must say there is now compliance. Initially, we had a problem with that, but there's full compliance now. This continues now with the cases that we have screened. You'll see from the 1st to the 6th, 2,444, the number tested, the number of confirmed cases, the number of active cases, and the number of recoveries, and the number of deaths. So as we go down there on the dates, you'll see that we got all the statistics for those categories. We can pass on that. This is just a slide showing you the epidemic curve, and as you can see, it's rising quite fast in our area. Okay, if we can move on. The figures here above is the epidemic curve. Okay, that shows it in the graphs. I won't go through that. But I think we are sitting at about 1,300 now. That's same graphic information on the cases, the geographic cases. This is in the various areas in the metro. So we can pass that one as well. Okay, this is the geographic distribution, and I think that it just gives, this is the narrative, the slide before when we saw the bars, the horizontal bars. Continue. This is, once again, it's just all geographic information, so we can pass this. Okay. Am I too fast here? Okay, now this graph here, the worst team on health is... Hello? Chair?
Mr. Naidu, the person who's talking, is it with you? There's somebody who's talking behind you there.
Yeah,
Can
Chair,
you tell this
okay.
person that you are in a meeting, he or she is such a cause of disruptions.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Can I continue?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. This is now the contact tracing as of the 2nd of June. And you'll see it's all the areas. We've got the King Williamstown, Dunsany, East London, and it's got the information there. So I won't go through each one, just to say that. But these are the cases, number of contacted and tracing. Okay, if we can pass through that. The next slide. So we have done the mass screening and targeted testing. It continues. That slide there shows you the various screening that we have done. Lots of screening in our area. Continue. Okay, this is just a different. Then the isolation and quarantine sites, we have 3 quarantine sites are actively admitting cases for quarantine. We have 31 cases that are in 3 sites, and 13 have been discharged to date. And continue. The inspections, we do a number of inspections on a daily basis at various shopping malls. And you'll see there all the shopping malls that have been visited, so we can pass that. Out of the 52 liquor outlets visited on the 6th of June, 1 liquor outlet was found non-compliant, and there was a pub and pool bar was operating, and people were found locked inside. SAPs were called, and they dealt with that incident, so we can pass on that. Okay, and this is also a roadblock that was held in Berlin, King Williamstown, where 270 motor vehicles were stopped and searched during a roadblock, so we can pass that. This work stream also deals with food control. So we go to the number of areas, make sure that they comply now with the regulations in terms of level 3. Continue. Okay, that just continues there. These are all the food premises that has been visited. So we can just pass through them. So we check for temperatures, make sure they're wearing masks, social distancing, and sanitizing is taking place. Okay, you can continue. So we also check on the risk assessment that those that are open for operations, they are complying also with the disaster management. Risk assessments are also done with our disaster management and our Department of Health. Okay, and we also look at the number of funerals. We go to funerals, we go to the funeral sites and the undertakers as well to make sure they're complying. That gives the information. So everybody coming from the Western Cape, they are also screened and tested with the deceased. So you can pass that. Okay, this is about the non-compliant there, about a mobile kitchen and taverns that were visited, and those that were non-compliant were then closed down. Okay, let's continue. Okay, next slide. Okay, right. These are the liquor outlets that were visited. So we can pass that. Okay, you can pass. These are all the liquor outlets. Okay. Can continue. Next slide. Okay. Okay, then we also monitor the burial sites for compliance, and you'll see the various sites that we have went to. In Hanover, Fort Jackson, there was 2 burials. Timbaza, 2 bodies we looked at, and the Cambridge crematoria has continuously been inspected for compliance. These are food samplings, Chair. We also do the food samplings, dairy standards and samplings run at the Novan Spa. So these are all the areas that we do to make sure that they are also complying in terms of the selling of these food. So we can pass on these ones. Water samples, we also do the water samples, the various clinics, pre-hospital. We look at the microbiological analysis as well, and you'll find these are the various clinics and hospitals that we have and pass through that. Okay, place of worship, together with SAPS, BSM Municipal Health, Disaster Management, we go to churches, and you'll find a number of areas that we make sure that they are compliant. The decontamination disinfection program within the Buffalo City area, you'll find these are all the areas our SM officers, sports and recreation, the regional offices of King Williamstown, traffic, electricity. You can continue. Next slide. It shows all the areas that has been decontaminated and disinfected. We also extend the services to national and provincial buildings and offices, and from time to time we assist other spheres of government as well. So this is a whole list of all the decontamination that has been done to date. So we can see our list is quite long, and we are being assisted by the disaster management. So all persons visiting the Eastern Cape during lockdown must be isolated or quarantined to limit the virus spread. All persons conducting funerals must report to the local police station to avoid COVID-19 funerals from other provinces taking place without compliance. Next one, there must be more focus on the inspection of taverns and villages, informal settlements in order to ensure compliance. Okay, next. Okay, now this is one of the work streams only, Chair, and we've got 4 more work streams to go through. I don't know how I'm doing with time because they're quite lengthy presentations from each work stream. I can be guided by you, Chair. If you can show the next work stream. Shall I continue, Chair? Okay, on water and sanitation, we've done an installation of 31 outstanding water tanks. Still in progress. Amatola Water is the implementing agent, and they assist us with the bulk water supply. We have got a contractor for the installation of 7 Cocta donated tanks, as the Honorable Mayor mentioned. These tanks are distributed to villages identified jointly with the traditional leaders. You can move on. 2 additional tankers were hired. As it says there, the current 13 DCM will remain delivering water. They almost on a 24/7 they're delivering water. We do have difficulties I experience when there are breakdowns, but we try to augment that with also some hiring of tankers. We do weekly water quality is monitored, and we make sure that we comply with the drinking water standards as per SANS. Can continue. As I said, the water and sanitation, and we also provide Department of Education, we assist them with the schools for potable water. A list of 9 schools was submitted last week, and we are providing them with water. Assessment.
Apologies, Chair.
Yes, fine.
Apologies, Chair. Which slide is this? Slide number.
I'm on. If Anila can just help me there, I don't have the slides with me.
The slide number, Adile.
It's a slide dealing with the infrastructure and public works and the water and sanitation.
I was in the thank you.
Numbers in the slides.
I don't have the slide in front of me.
Our one ends at thank you.
Yes, I don't have. Chair?
So many
Chair?
thank you. At the end of, yes.
No, I'm saying some of the slides have been quiet all along, but I see it's continuing. Some of the slides we don't have, and we are given the so-called updated program.
Yes, because the one that you are saying it's an updated thing, it's not even numbered here for me. So that's the challenge with the document that's updated. Can we then focus on the one that we have been given? It's a lot of information that is here as well. When I look at this, so much information. If he's to present, it's gonna take the whole 2 hours. Ne?
Yes.
Alternatively, can I propose that let us just take questions, and then if questions that are asked are in the slide, they will
refer them.
Yes, because now it's a futile exercise what they are doing. 70-something slide document that we're seeing for the first time.
Yeah. So I know you have read the one that the mayor had presented. That one you have read 100%. I think this one is just additional information. So can I see show of hands? I'm sorry, acting city you will have to end it here because otherwise nobody is concentrating. Can I see show of hands? Then
Thank you, Chair.
Sure.
Hadebe.
Drink.
Mkalipi. Mpumza, I've noted you long ago. Literally, are you okay? Hussein?
You can add my name, Chair. I was just waiting for.
It's just because I'm entering just now. There are certain things which I missed already.
Oh, okay. Opperman, are you okay?
Opperman, please, Chair.
Okay. Did I miss, Claza? You are here.
You have my name, Chair?
Yes, I do. I do. Hademe?
Yes, Chair. No, I'm saying Honorable Hussein was waiting for me to go first.
No.
Can I protect this member, please? I'm protecting you, Honorable Hussein.
Brother, if I have to wait for you, I will get old. I have to wait for you. You are too slow for me.
Proceed.
No, thanks, Chair. Press my disappointment. I'm raising this, Chair. You would recall in our group, I think around about 12, when you asked us, are we still up? I said, we're busy preparing for tomorrow. We slept way after midnight reading the document. Now to be given a more than 7-slide document on the it's I am very disturbed. I want to register that, and I'm going to appeal to councillors and the leadership in future. Please take the study group serious. We take your work serious. When you have given us the presentation, we made sure that we read, and it's highly unacceptable. I thought I should register that, Chair. Chair, in terms of the regulations, specifically Regulation 399, it speaks about developing a COVID response plan. I was expecting a detailed plan, but so far you have given us actions that have been undertaken. I'm raising this, Chair, because Regulation 318, again, it says you must make resources and funding available for the implementation of this regulation. Now, the first thing I would have expected is to get a sense of how much was approved by council as a response in terms of resource allocation to your plan. We have not get the sense whether or not you are short of funding. You have just made indication of that 20 billion that you would need assistance, but you must have a plan and put and attach figures into your plan. Well, the question that I prepared last night, you have already
this morning.
Yes, this morning.
Prepared it this morning.
Yes, because in your first presentation, you have not indicated.
Opperman, and I wonder who's that third person as well. It was this morning.
Yes, Chair. So this one has been taken care of because I wanted to get an understanding. Being an hotspot, an epicenter of COVID-19 in Eastern Cape, how many quarantine sites have you identified? You're indicating that you have 3. I'm not too sure whether that 3 are privately owned or public sites. How many beds are there? And out of those 3 quarantine sites that you have identified in terms of Regulation 318, how many are active? So if we can get that understanding, the 200 beds that you have indicated, Honorable Mayor, is that fully operational or is still in the pipeline of being finalized? Again, when you look at Regulation 399, they speak about provision of water and sanitation. We would like to get a detailed understanding of water tanks and tankers, and in which area have you installed these tanks, and how many are outstanding? For example, if you are saying you have been supplied by the National Department 2,000, out of 2,000, have you been able to install the entire, and which areas are those? Moving right along, Chair, in terms of when you talk about transport, Regulation 412, it speaks about cleaning of public facilities, your taxi rank. How many taxi ranks do you have in Buffalo City? Are they all operational now that we are under Regulation 3? What measures are in place in ensuring that those taxi ranks are disinfected, and how often do you disinfect those taxi ranks? Can I get that understanding in line with Regulation 412? You are also, Chair, in terms of the regulation, expected to put measures in place. The mayor municipality is back to its full capacity in terms of operation. What are the measures in place to ensure safety of the employees with your services now that all the employees are back at work? Have you, in terms of the regulation, put measures in place to ensure safety and security of your employees? Regulation 492 speaks about the adoption of budget, and in this regard, you were exempted from following some of the prescripts in terms of the MFMA. Have you adopted the 2020-2021 budget? Are you conducting your visual meeting successfully? And if you have issues in terms of meeting virtually, what are the challenges and what are the measures in place to ensure that you mitigate those challenges? Do all your councillors have the tools of trade, the gadgets in the form of the laptop, data, and also connectivity? When it comes to the municipal clinics, we have had in previous metros that have appeared before us, there were certain metros where clinic had to be closed because they couldn't deal and cope with the number of COVID-19 cases. So in the case of the Buffalo City, how many clinics do you have that belongs to the municipality? And are they all fully functional? Do you have issues in relation to PPEs, or all systems go, you don't have challenges in relation of PPEs when it comes to your clinics? Let me not take all the questions, Chair, and give over to colleagues to raise some of the questions. For now, I will stop here. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Hatebe. Honorable Kabanchawa.
Thank you, Chairperson. And thank you to the Executive Mayor. And let me welcome the presentation both from the Executive Mayor and the other councillors. And thank you for the Executive Mayor to outline an informative presentation to us today. Chairperson, I'm saying this because I know what the Executive Mayor, I know even myself, because I'm deployed in Buffalo City with the ANC Women's League. Every time and again I call comrade there, they told me about that, to say Executive Mayor is looking after his people in Buffalo City. And what he's saying here is a thing that was happening. I can assure that, because these comrades that I was calling them, asking them the safe, because I was hearing that about that. There is many people who were infected, especially in the correctional services where this infection was started in Buffalo City. Chairperson, I want to also comment to the Executive Mayor about it, to look after to our indigenous and support them, because it is a need to have these sanitizers, because they don't know nothing about that. I comment that to the mayor. And as Chair, Executive Mayor of Buffalo City, if I may ask, do you have any people in your council or in your staff who are infected about this COVID-19? That is my question from the Executive Mayor, Chair, to say, did he has anyone in his staff and all in his executive council or councillor who was infected about this COVID-19? I'm just ending there, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Mamkize. Honorable Mamkize. Honorable Mpumza. Honorable Mpumza.
Chair.
Yay.
Hello, Chair.
Chair.
Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Sure.
Chair, in welcoming the presentation by Buffalo City, particularly the mayor. The mayor has indicated that in his presentation, particularly on the provision of water and sanitation services, that the water tankers that were provided by the Department of Human Settlement, Water and Sanitation. That service had actually been discontinued by the department. Can we understand better, Mayor? Has the department discontinued the service because you were adequately capable of providing that particular service through the tankers? Because also the last slide, that red one, indicates that we have actually bought 2 additional tanks. The Department of Water and Sanitation had actually discontinued the provisioning of water through tankering. Could we understand better whether the department was withdrawing this service is because that the Buffalo City had the capability of providing that service? Second, to Buffalo City BCM, what is BCM doing to ensure that community means to prevent the transmission in the event that it has been declared the epicenter of the pandemic in the Eastern Cape? And what has been the progress in providing potable water and sanitation services to higher population density settlements, like your 154 informal settlements? Chair, again, the question of a thoroughgoing communication and the messaging of the COVID-19 regulations and the protocols is a matter of necessity in geographic areas that have been declared to be the epicenter of the pandemic. What strategies is the BCM employing to ensure that widespread and constant messaging and communication of the pandemic to communities is taking place? And how effective such strategies in relation to changing the behavior patterns that the mayor was indicating that in some areas, the behavior patterns are not preventative, they are actually contributing towards the increase in infection and transmission. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Mpumza. Honorable Brink.
Thanks very much, Chair. The question to the have you taken the effect of the lockdown on municipal revenue into account in putting together your draft budget for 2020-2021? That should have been published, and the effects should have been obvious, but maybe they weren't. So have you taken that into account, the shortfall that you're projecting, not only in the present financial year, but on available evidence into the next financial year in putting together your draft budget? And so is it fully funded? And Chair, I think the question also arises for the Deputy Minister here. After all of the committee has received of the effect of COVID on municipal revenues, what is the status of the interventions that the national government is going to take to support municipalities to bounce back from this drop in revenue? Thanks very much.
Thank you, Honorable Mkalipi. Kalipi? Honorable Mkalipi? Kaiser?
Yes, Chair, I'm here.
Yes.
I'm here, Chair.
Okay, proceed.
No.
Yes, Chair. Person, thanks very much.
Sorry,
Chair.
Kaiser. Yes.
Oh, Chairperson, do you hear me?
Proceed. Unmute your mic. Yes, proceed. Okay.
Oh, okay. All right. I just want to switch off my camera because of the network, Chairperson.
Okay, it's fine.
Please.
Proceed.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. All right. I'm going to be all over because of the, yes, sitting chair. Do you hear me very well?
Proceed.
Chair.
Proceed. Yes, proceed. You are audible, Honorable Mukalipi.
Chair.
Proceed. Yes. Proceed.
Hello, Chairperson.
The floor is yours, Honorable Mukalipi.
I want to ask. There's a problem. If you keep on saying I'm proceeding, Chair. I just want to ask the executive mayor, one, on the billing system, if the honorable mayor can also clarify us, because there's a huge problem in relations to a billing system of Buffalo City. Because now, because of COVID-19, we understand that workers at some point they were not expected.
Can you hear, colleagues?
Come to work to do their part. The residents of Buffalo City, they keep on the bills, which is very high according to the information that we get on the ground. Okay, I'll come back, Chair.
Yes, let me give Teza. Yes, let me give Teza a chance. You will come back, ne?
Okay, all right, Chair.
Honorable Teza.
Thank you very much, Chair. You know, whereas Section 195D of the Constitution asserts that services must be provided impartially, fairly, equitably, and without bias. The people of Engqusho local municipality complain of bias distribution and the food that is kept in councillors' houses. This problem cuts across all political parties. Councillors are giving food parcels to family, friends, and their cabal within their organizations. This behavior is nothing short of fraud, Chairperson. What measures have the Buffalo City Metro has taken to stop parcels within the area of your jurisdiction? Number two, Enkubela, according to the information on the ground that we're getting on the ground, because that's where the people are. Enkubela Hospital in Tanzania, workers positive are forced to continue going to work. When fighters went to ask the officials, they cited that they are short-staffed. Mr. Kuni, an acting CEO and Chief of Staff of NES, was part of that meeting. Also, the CDWs who have tested positive also are still in operation. What amount of intervention have you taken to stop this denialism and thus stop the spread of COVID-19 in the Eastern Cape as numbers are escalating? Number three, Chair, what the sewage system in Duncan Village, where there are flush toilets, the leakage dating a long time ago. When is the city ever going to address the question of the leakage of sewage there, which is running in the streets? How is it that the people are ever going to be safe from the spread of diseases during COVID-19? The other one, Ward 10 and Ward 11 in Pedi has dry taps. In fact, people events such as funerals where they will queue for water from one water tanker from the municipality. How will you ensure that communities are protected against COVID-19 when there is no water in the area? Another case is in Ehlosini, where the community there was community uprising on the question of water. So how is it that the metro is addressing the availability of water, thus the availability coupled with the availability of cleanliness that is required during COVID-19 in those rural communities? Section 152(1)(b) of the Constitution, Act 108 of the objects of local government is to ensure that the provision of services to community occurs in a sustainable manner. What sustainable measures, Mayor, have you got to ensure that the water reticulation that is in those rural municipalities speak to the availability of sustainable water in rural areas? In Dimbaza and Devon and the surrounding villages have been complaining for a long time about water that is closed without alerting them, when there should be communication prior, using your own data to send SMSs prior to the closure of water. Now, section that transparency must be fostered by providing public with timely, accessible, and accurate information. What have you done in this regard in terms of communicating with the communities? The other question, Chair, has been covered by Honorable Mkalipi in terms of the billing system. But the last one, Chair, is the mayoral committee, Mayor, has the mayoral committee been converted to BCM command team? Is that mayoral committee currently running the municipality? Where is that mayoral committee now, during this time, accountable to, when the council is not sitting, when the central role of councillors have been relegated to nothingness? So what is it? How are you going to remedy that situation? Can you provide us with relevant details with regard to the lecture?
Thank you so much, Honorable Glazer. Honorable Flow. Honorable Flow.
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. Yeah, Chairperson, I don't know.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Proceed.
Okay. Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you. Also, I welcome the Honorable Mayor of the Buffalo City. My question will be on that your province has been declared hotspot of COVID-19 epicenter. And you have mentioned very clear that your people does not take the scourge of COVID-19 serious. What control measures are there in place in relation to public space that you emphasize that control of transmission? And we have also mentioned the 200 beds, but with no details, information about the quarantine areas. And then you did also mention the social distancing for preventing the risk of transmission. What control measures are there in place in relation to public space also for the facilities and the offices? And also on the issue of the revenue, that municipalities are still expected to do their best in collection of the revenue, while allowing for the relief for the indigent and those with temporary payment problems, in line with their existing credit control and indigent policy framework. How is the city going to address this issue? And I think most of the issues that I wanted to ask your executive mayor, I think you have covered me because you have mentioned clearly that the shortage of the keys, and then we have covered, and then also the issue of the backlog of testing you have also mentioned. I think most of the issue was covered by my colleague. Then I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Tou. Honorable Hussein.
Chair, thank you very much. May I just make this one comment in that when I read the report, I was somewhat concerned about the stats in respect of the spread of the virus in this particular municipality. And I think that none of the slides reflect the true nature of what's going on, with the exception of the one slide that shows the graph and the upward trajectory of the number of infections that are sharply increasing in that municipality. And I must say that it is worrying, not to suggest that there are other municipalities that don't find themselves in a similar situation, but it's very clear to me from that one graph alone that the infection rate in this particular municipality is sharply on the increase, which is why the mayor in his opening remarks says that the municipality is the epicenter of the virus in that particular province. And I would have expected then, Chairperson, that with that recognition of the seriousness of the matter, that you would have a response that matches the seriousness of the problem. And if you look at just the one aspect of the testing alone, it troubles me that the municipality isn't doing as much testing as it should be doing to identify as many people as possible who are positive and isolate those contacts as quickly as possible. To give you an example, if you look at on one of those slides, there's about 2,600 odd people that have been identified for tracing, and there's about 350 that have not yet been traced. Now, as you and I are speaking here today, those 350 people who are possibly infected are walking around and infecting others. And so I worry that the speed in which the municipality is able to test and isolate is actually contributing to the spread of the virus in that particular municipality, to be able to close down and mitigate that spread. So I'd like to hear from the mayor his comments in respect of the speed in which they're supposed to be tracing and identifying and tracing those contacts and placing them in a rate in which they are continuing at the moment, because to me that seems like a very worrying statistic. Coupled with that, Chairperson, is the one slide where it shows that on the 6th of June, for example, they conducted an entire day. And I'd like to hear what the circumstances around that are. If you, as a municipality that is the epicenter, I would expect that your number of tests per day should be on the increase. On the contrary, it's on the decrease. And in that one period, in the 1 week that you've presented to us on that one slide, it looks to me that you're doing on average about 100 odd tests per day, which I think is really insufficient. And in reality, the spread of the virus in your municipality is probably much higher than what is indicated in your reports at the moment. And you have an enemy that's coming after you that you can't see, and you don't know where it is. And I'm not sure that you and the rest of the team in the municipality are maximizing every possibility of insurance on a regular basis, but the graph doesn't show that, and the figures that you've presented to us doesn't show that. So I'd like to hear your comments on that matter, Mr. Mayor. The second point I want to raise is I see that there is quite a high number of electricity disconnections in the municipality in particular. And I want to hear from you, Mr. Mayor, do you think this is the appropriate time for you to be doing that, given that you've also already had some protest in your municipality around the lack of provision of electricity in your municipality? You mentioned also that there are 154 informal, 154 informal settlements. Can you please maybe just tell us how many of that 154 informal settlements still do not have access to water since the first day of the lockdown? It's gone now 3 months or so, and I would think that those areas would be your number one priority to make sure that people in the informal settlements have full and proper access to sanitation. Given the propensity for the spread of the virus, in especially informal settlements where it's very difficult for people to for social distancing in those informal settlements. So I would think that a municipality would want to invest as much of its resources and effort as possible in the areas where the risk is greatest, especially amongst those poor communities in the informal settlements. So how many of that informal settlements do not have water, access to water, and how soon can we expect that you would make sure that your systems and the municipalities' resources are directed to the provision of water in those informal settlements? You, in one of the slides, Chair, there was the mention of the closing down of a mobile kitchen. If I'm not mistaken, it was at a taxi rank. I don't know what the circumstances around that are, but if I look at the information on the face of it, I question why the municipality is shutting down informal traders of any sort, unless mention or any other contravention. I would like to hear what was the reason for that. You specifically highlight the fact that they were selling. My understanding of the regulations do not prohibit that, unless it was during the earlier part of the lockdown, but this looks like a report to me of the more recent activities of your municipality. You've also mentioned that you've prosecuted 2 informal traders, and I'd like to know what the circumstances around that are. I'm not sure whether this is the time, but perhaps there's a good explanation for that, and I'll give you an opportunity to do that. The last question, Chairperson, is around the schools in the Eastern Cape. If they could just provide some sort of comfort in respect of the total number of schools that still do not have access to water, and what efforts are being invested to ensure that all of the schools, since they've opened, have proper access to water. Thank you very much. Those are the only questions I have.
Thank you very much, Honorable Hussein. Honorable Mkalipi. Honorable Mkalipi. Honorable Mkalipi.
Yes, Chair, I'm here.
Proceed.
Chairperson, I'm here. Don't hear me.
Yes, the platform is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Chairperson. Thanks very much for the presentation. I've been covered slightly by my colleagues who have raised some of the questions that I wanted to ask from the municipality. Nevertheless, I just want to get a clarity on what Honorable Hussein was alluding shortly about the. It's also appearing on the presentation, Mayor, in terms of legal electrical disconnection. It seems as if you are telling us as the portfolio committee that we have disconnected so many people, Shak, Santa, and so forth, but you don't tell us in terms of how did you help those people, because even the regulations also specify that people, they must not be disconnected during COVID-19. So therefore, we would like you to expand on that one after we have discovered that they've illegal connected on the electricity. And how did you also resolve that matter in terms of people not ended up without electricity during these trying times? The billing system that I tried to talk about earlier on, to say that we know in the city there's that huge billing system that is there in terms of the history of your city. So could you please also share with us as this committee, how did you resolve that, or how are you intending to resolve that billing system? Because it also have an effect on the poor people who does not have anything, especially it will be very difficult now because many people will lose their job already if they have not lost their job. And according to the report of the department, your municipality is one of the municipalities that were mentioned in the report of the department that 50% of your population live before poverty line. If you can also tell us, how do you address that situation? Because you can't have 50% of your population who is swimming in poverty and you don't have any program to address that, because it's a cause for concern. We'd like to get you, Honorable Mayor, to clarify that on us. Honorable Mayor, there is a hospital by the name of Life Healthcare in Buffalo City. I think one of my colleagues tried to say that since your municipality is an epicenter and there are so many departments that also experience the COVID-19 cases. So therefore, I should think that you must coordinate as a municipality in order to have one report, especially when I'm mentioning Life Healthcare Hospital. It's a private hospital, but is within your municipality. That hospital, there's a huge problem whereby staff members have tested positive. Some of them have been taken to quarantine site. The name of the site is Reef and NP. And that quarantine site, that I don't know if you have any knowledge about this quarantine site, which is the BNB Reef. It's got 33 or 34 people that are there right now. But the videos that you are getting from those people, it does not show anything suggest that they are treated with dignity. I just posted a video on our group as a committee just to say to the chairperson and the members, please look what our people are treated in that quarantine site. If it's not one of your sites, we humbly please ask you to go and intervene, because our people can't be treated like dogs. When they were given food, the food is just put there and the person must go and get the food through her feet. So therefore, that particular hospital, there's a huge problem. And then there is an issue that we know that in the country we are short of doctors. So there is a doctor that is also going between the hospitals addressing this COVID-19, but he has tested positive, but he's also having his private consultation doctor's room. So he's not in quarantine, he's still continuing attending to his patients, and is a cause for concern as well for people around in Buffalo City. In Ward 45, in Emajarente, I'm mentioning this one, Chairperson, because it has been mentioned that in this ward in Berlin, people were removed from their houses and they were placed in temporary shelters near Berlin factories in 2011, Executive Mayor. Now those temporary shelters are damaged because they are not being made permanent shelters. So if the municipality can also share with us as a committee, how can you put people in temporary shelters in 2011 and now it's 2020 and those people are still suffering there? Can we get that report from you? And there's a lot of unfinished housing projects in PCM, like in Ward 11, in Ward 12, in Ward 24. Now those houses are the home of criminals' activities. So if the Honorable Mayor can also tell us in terms of the food parcel, if you can clarify us as this committee, how did you manage that process of food parcel? Because there are reports that are coming forth to say that it was used for political party. And we know that during COVID-19, there's no the nepotism must be the thing of the past, because everyone is, is surviving under your leadership as a mayor, and you are not a mayor of a particular party. So therefore, if you can clarify us as a committee, how did the issue of distribution of a food parcel was handled by you, Honorable Mayor, or your office? And there is a ward councillor of Ward 10 whereby this issue of a food parcel was a problem, and they ended up opening a case against that particular. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable. Those are the questions. Over to you, Executive Mayor and team. You can allocate responses.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much. We have 3 quarantine sites that are already operational in the city. What we have done as the city, we have turned our resorts into quarantine sites. Now, looking at the escalation of the infections, Chair, and the possibility that as and when we reach the peak of the infections in September, we need more space for self-quarantine, given the fact that our people are residing in high-density areas. We are now looking at building 200-bed field hospital. But then the challenge that we're having now is that we are intending to use the USDG funding for this, and that we are awaiting the approval of this transaction by the National Treasury, because they have said to us, it is not our mandate to do so. But because we are in a pandemic, we are expected to respond in a situation where our people are being infected and affected by the coronavirus. Now, Chair, on the issue of the disinfection of the taxi ranks, that we have done. But then with the workers coming back, there is a high demand for decontamination. We had to start a new program of decontaminating all our places of work in terms of the depots where our people at the start of level 3 of the lockdown. We have to that end, Chair, ensured that all the COVID-19 protocols are adhered to in terms of the bringing in of workers who were from home. Those who are over 60 years are still working from home. Those who have declared comorbidities are still working from home. So the social distancing, the wearing of masks, and the sanitization of hands is adhered to in line with the COVID-19 protocols. We provide protective personal equipment for our workers. Now, on the issue of provision of water, Chair, as the city, we are at 98% in terms of water connectivity. What we have done, we have put additional standpipes in the informal settlements so that our people can have access to water and be able to wash their hands. And over and above that, we provided soap. The 2% that does not have access to water is in the villages, Chair. Remember, our metro is also as a big part of rural communities. Now, on that one, this is where we're using water tankers. We have
I can't hear them, Chair.
Mute yourself.
Sorry. On the issue of the water tankers, Chair, we have 13 water tankers and we're providing water to the rural communities, the 2% that is not connected to water. Now, the Department of Water and Sanitation promised to give us 72 water tanks to deliver to the villages. Out of those, 31 are still outstanding. We are working with them to ensure that those are delivered. On the issue of the screening and testing, Chair, it is the Department of Health that is leading.
I'm sorry to interrupt the mayor. Before he moves on to the next point, would you mind? I don't think he's answered the question about the water property. I asked very clearly how many informal settlements do not have access to water. You gave me a percentage.
All the informal settlements do have water. All 154 settlements do have water. However, that is not the same with electricity. Many of our informal settlements do not have access to electricity, but not water. It is the villages that, the 2% that I'm talking about, it is the villages that we deliver water to via the water tankers.
Thank you very much.
Oh. Now, on the issue of the screening and testing, it is the responsibility of the Department of Health to provide leadership insofar as screening and testing is concerned. We do not own clinics as Buffalo City Metro. The clinics are under the Department of Health. There was a question about the budget, Chair. Our municipality has taken care of the fact that we are not going to be able to meet our projections, and the budget that we are presenting in council on Friday, this coming Friday, takes into account that question, Chair. Another question was whether there has been anyone with having COVID or diagnosed with COVID in our city. The truth is that we do. We have one recovery. We have 2 cases in quarantine. We have 1 death in terms of our own workers. In terms of messaging, we use all forms of communication, including radios, to ensure that our people understand the implications of not meeting the protocols of COVID-19. The funerals we are monitoring through our health and public safety works. Now, on the mayoral committee and the mayoral committee being the command council, the truth of the matter, Chair, is that that command council is constituted by the members of the mayoral committee, the leaders of the opposition party unions. They sit there every Tuesday. On the illegal connections, Chair, that question was raised.
Sorry, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, Chair. Chair, I think that the mayor sometimes, at the most, he tries to shorten the questions. The questions, that question relates to the command council that is currently sitting now, you know. And I asked what is the central role of the councillors, because the councillors are not sitting.
Colleagues,
well,
the councillors are not sitting. What are they accountable to?
Can we, I think I did the mistake by allowing Honorable Hussein. Can you reserve it for a follow-up question so that you don't, if you feel the question is not adequately
noted, Chair.
responded,
Noted.
just note it, then there will be a turn for follow-up questions. I won't allow anyone to now interject the mayor. Ne?
According to my knowledge, Chair, we have had 2 virtual council meetings in the recent past. Our next meeting to adopt the budget will be sitting on Friday. So I am not sure of the non-sitting of council, Chair. I felt that should clarify the point. On the illegal connections, people are illegally connecting themselves into the grid, and in the process of doing so, they collapse the system of electricity provision to communities that are connected legally. We have applied for a grant. Our intention is to connect all informal settlements. However, we have not been able to do so up until now. So those people that were disconnecting are the people who illegally connect themselves into the grid, and by so doing collapse the service that we're providing to the deserving communities. Now, on these issues of on the issue of Emma Jarandi and asked by the honorable member, then we were disturbed by the lockdown. The processes of appointing a contractor to build houses there is now being reinstated. So we're dealing with the matter of Ward 45 Emma Jarandi. On the provision of social relief that we have undertaken, the lists were developed by ward councillors, not political parties. The list to identify the beneficiaries per ward were put together by ward councillors in consultation with other ward stakeholders there, including the churches. That is what we said they should do. And that there are no, we have not decided on distribution of food parcels. What we did was to submit those lists to the supermarkets where people can decide what they want to eat and collect their food at a supermarket chosen by themselves on the ward. On the workers that are forced to go to work at Nkubela, I think the Department of Health can better respond to this, because Nkubela is a TB hospital, and I've not heard of this. I'm hearing it for the first time, honorable member. I will make a follow-up to that. The Duncan presidential project that is being led by the Department of Human Settlements to change the face of Duncan Village. But let me hasten to say, in many instances, the informal settlements that are built in Duncan Village are built on our system. It becomes when there is a challenge of sewer there, it becomes very difficult to remove the shacks so that we can fix. But another challenge is the illegal connection of the informal dwellers there, illegally connecting themselves to the sewer system. And sometimes that is not helpful, but we are intervening insofar as the Duncan Village matter. Thank you very much. If there are any other questions that I left, the acting city manager will intervene.
Acting city manager, any outstanding responses?
Thank you, Chair. No, I think the mayor has covered all the matters, and he's also provided clarity on the screening and testing which is done, and we are assisted with the Department of Health. I must say we have a very close relationship with them, and when cases are identified and contacts, they do help the municipality. And we do have a risk assessment plan for the institution and per each department, which deals with the PPEs for the institution, the social distancing, and the provision of services. And that takes care of rotation of staff, working different shifts, etc. So I think the mayor has quite adequately covered the rest of the questions. Thank you, Chair.
That's the time, colleagues, for follow-ups now. Can I see show of hands? Just
yes,
shout.
Chair.
Okay, Klava wants to follow up, followed by who? Kleza.
Mkalipi. Mkalipi.
And Hadebe, Chair.
Mpumza, Chair. Mpumza.
Mkalipi.
Mkalipi, so
long ago. You are number 2. You are
Mpumza,
now Mpumza. Yes, Mpumza. Who else? Okay. Eza is covered. Okay, because it was responded. Okay, over to you.
I'm not covered.
Ah. You are on the list, Eza.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Chairperson. My follow-up to the executive mayor, and thank you to the executive mayor to answer my question. And also, I want to make a follow-up of, as the executive mayor was saying, there are people who are the land grab in his area, in his seat, Buffalo City. And I like to ask from the executive mayor what is doing about those. Did he evict them, or maybe he leave them like that because of the adhering of the COVID-19? And also, I want to ask the executive mayor about what he's saying about to people who are misbehaving in the social distancing. Did he have law enforcement like soldiers who can help him in his city to make sure that people are following the regulation as they are, and they are adhered by the pandemic? Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Mkalipi. Honorable Mkalipi. Honorable Mkalipi.
Thank you very much. The only answer. Yes, Chair, I'm here.
Proceed.
The mayor only answered 2 questions from me, Chairperson. The issue of guarantee, which I appreciated that, and the issue of food parcels, of which I was not satisfied. Mayor, ubaba usodolophu wase-BCM, if kunengxaki you can't just by saying that issue parcels was coordinated at a ward level by all stakeholders, by ward councillors. You know very well that people are affected, and also so please, Mayor, attend of people were overlooked in terms of the food parcel. Mayor, I raised sharply the issue of Life Healthcare Hospital, which is a private hospital. And I said to you, Mayor, there is a huge problem of staff members who are testing positive, and some of them are not taken to quarantine sites. Some of them are told to come to the hospital. The hospital is not been cleaned or attended to. I said to you, if you don't know that, and I know that first thing that you are going to say no, is a private hospital. But since you are talking about the life of the people, we seek your intervention to go and look at this issue of that Life Healthcare Hospital, of which I believe the Premier visited that hospital today. I even asked you the quarantine site by the name of the RIB-NB. And I said to you, Mayor, please look at that quarantine site from that hospital that I mentioned, to say that people there are treated like animals. If they are given food, banikwa ngonyawo ukudla, and then abantu abagulayo bahambe bayothatha ukudla ngonyawo. I'm saying to you, as a leader in the PCM, please look at that particular issue and try to intervene in order for the people to feel that they are not treated like animals. The last point, Chair, that I raised, I asked specifically because I think the mayor must also come clean with the committee. The issue of the report is an official report from this committee to say that BCM, 50% of the population of BCM live below poverty line. I'm asking the mayor, what intervention are you having? I mean, this is not a good situation whereby your 50% of your population are swimming in poverty. And you are telling us here, Guti, there are illegal electrical disconnection, which is good. We appreciate that. But those people who are doing those illegal connection, you know very well, I think it's also linked to this thing of 50% who are swimming in poverty. So if people are not working, if there's no job, if there's unemployment in your municipality, surely people will want to leave. They will do all illegal things. So I'm saying you as a municipality, what are the intervention programs? Because you can't just go and disconnect, because we are saying that they were connecting in the grid. As a result, there's a huge problem around the electricity. But alternatively, what did you provide to those people? Because you can't just leave them without electricity. You can't just punish them, because you know what the reason is unemployment. Thank you, Chairperson.
Honorable Hadebe.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Mayor, thank you for your initial response. I've got a follow-up on few issues that I initially raised. The first issue, Honorable Mayor, was in relation with your plan, whether or not this plan was approved and adopted by council, and how much was it approved in terms of resource allocation as required by the Act, by the regulation as issued by the Minister of Cooperative, in order for us to have a sense whether or not your municipality is having enough resources to fight this pandemic. The second issue that I did not get a clear answer on, yes, you've answered that you've got 3 quarantine sites. Now, what I would like to know in relation to those 3 quarantine sites, are they public facilities or are they privately owned? And how many beds currently do you have? You indicated that you're in a process of getting approval to use your USDG to build a site with 200 beds. So those that you are currently having, which is 3 sites, how many beds are they? And are they all active currently? Your slides, I think it indicated that there were 30 people and 13 were discharged. So if you can just give us a sense. And lastly, you responded that you do disinfect taxi ranks, but I did not get the actual number. How many in your municipality? How many taxi rank you have? I'm asking this question in relation to your municipality being a hotspot and epicenter, so that you can get a sense of these public facilities that are contributing to your municipality being an epicenter, and the measures therefore that are in place, whether or not you are equal to the task in terms of responding positively in mitigating the spread of the pandemic. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Honorable Mpumza.
Thank you, Chairperson. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mayor and your leadership. Molo Lance, on slide 17, the relief measures, the provision of relief measures through food parcels to local residents. The slide indicates the provision of food parcel to residents, but does not clearly indicate the distribution of food parcels to poor and destitute household. Mayor, is this an oversight in the presentation? That is my first question. The second question relates to the fact that the directives and the direction, as well as the regulations, emphasize control of this, of transmission of the virus, that it requires extraordinary measures in relation to provision of cleansing and sanitation of public spaces. What are the hotspot areas within Buffalo City that require such extraordinary measures, Mayor, in your municipality? My last question, Chair, relates to the fact that the Mayor has indicated that they have developed measures, institutional arrangement measures at a ward level in the form of response task teams that are chaired and led by ward councillors. Are these response task teams in place already, or is the municipality still in a process of developing such response task teams at a ward level as part of combating the spread of the pandemic? The last regulations require that as part of the response plans, that municipalities, particularly the metros, that they report regularly, weekly on the mayor on their covert activities within a week. Is that happening? Is the municipality indeed reporting to the minister on a weekly basis about how they are tackling the spread of the pandemic within this epicenter called Buffalo City? Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Mpumza. Honorable Hleza.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't see my follow-up question relates to homeless people in Buffalo City. My colleague, Honorable Mkhalipi, mentioned the 45% of over 50% of unemployed, and I have not seen in the presentation where are the homeless taken care of, which quarantine site, and what measures are there to feed the homeless. And number two, I wanted to know in terms of Kwaqongqotha in King Williamstown, in Ward 40. The power outages there, they happen 2 times a day. Can the mayor supply us with details in terms of what happens there? What communication methods have been put in place by the city to assure that there will be sustainable measures in terms of that, in terms of providing electricity and the outages being put to rest there. On the question of, lastly, Chair, on the question of public spaces, I wanted to know how often, that was my interest on that question, how often does the disinfection happen? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Hleza. I had some few questions. I thought the colleagues will ask them. I realized they are not. They haven't done that.
Sorry, Chair. Myself, Chair. So.
Oh, I didn't. Oh, on follow-ups, you are.
Yeah.
Okay,
no. Okay, Chairperson, my last question is: did the mayor, their municipality, finalize and adopt their IDP? And then, if they adopted it, did they consult the stakeholders and the entire communities? I thank you.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Tou. And The thing that one has noted, it's about your tariff increase that are above inflation rates. And actually they double as what is seen as reasonable. How do you then justify this in the context of COVID-19, which bring its own economic hardship? And the other issue, Executive Mayor and team, I've noted with regard to your collection rates, which it's estimated to drop below 80% this month. This is a clear indication that the community cannot afford the above mentioned increases. How will you then therefore curtail unnecessary and unproductive costs within your 2020-21 budget? And then the other issue that one is interested on is as to when will you be relaxing the water restriction to encourage better hygiene practices? And then the other issue that one wants to raise with you is about how many water and electricity disconnections and blocks have been reconnected in the past 2 months, or are you posing disconnections of municipal services? And then the last one is with regard to your 31 water tanks that have not been installed yet, while we have noted that there are 9 schools that don't have potable water within your jurisdiction. Those are some of the issues that I thought I should couple them with the colleagues follow up. Over to you, Executive Mayor and team.
Thank you very much, Chair, once again. The issue of billing, Chair, or the first question was on the land grabbing. We do not tolerate a situation where people grab the municipal land and we intercept them through our law enforcement agencies as the city. So that's the answer on that one. The second question relates to social distancing. Law enforcement in the city, whether it is a social grant queue, whether it's the people who are going to the bank, they are there, including our disaster management officials. But also enforcing the regulation around the wearing of the mask in our city, as it is the case in any other building. People don't come in without wearing their mask. On the billing, we are contemplating to move away from the manual reading of meters. Chair, we would like to have a situation where the city is moving to smart metering so that there can be accuracy in the billing. Remember, in some instances, the meter readers go to households and they find that the doors are locked, they can't come in there to read the meters. And that led to an estimated billing based on the previous account, of the previous month's account. It's a challenge that we must address, Chair. I concede to that because it arises out of this manual billing system. On the life healthcare facility, that which is happening there cannot be tolerated, but the state does have an option to withdraw the license of the hospital if the hospital does not comply with the regulations of the Command Council. I think that's the option or a recourse that the state have insofar as the non-compliance at life healthcare facility. It is true that our people live below poverty line. because of unemployment and underinvestment. Now, for the economy to grow, for employment to be created, one needs investment. And here, that is not happening. We have seen deindustrialization taking place over a period of time. Deindustrialization meaning deinvestment or underinvestment, including the state-owned entities are not investing enough in this part of the country. Now, if you have such a situation where both the private sector and the state are not sufficiently investing, you are likely to have people living below poverty line. We are working with all the stakeholders in this regard, including local businesses, to encourage them to invest. As we speak, we, the city, we are a major employer in this city, employing more than 5,000 people. On the approval of plan by council, the council has not approved our plan because the council has not said to make that consideration. On the issue of the quarantine sites, I would not be sure of how many beds are there. I think the acting city manager will respond to that. On the ranks, how many taxi ranks do we have? We have 10 taxi ranks here in Buffalo City, and all those were sanitized or were decontaminated. But then the shift was back to decontaminating the state buildings, including our own buildings, in preparation for level 3. We will have to go back there and redo the sanitization again. Our council to adopt budget and IDP will be sitting on Friday. Will be sitting on Friday, this coming Friday. The challenge of outages in Congo, remember that in the villages, the reticulation there is done by ESCOM. ESCOM is doing reticulation of electricity in the villages. And in our bilaterals with ESCOM, I will bring this matter to their attention around the inconsistent supply of electricity at Congo Water. Insofar as old age homes, sorry, not old age homes, what are these?
Homeless people, Mayor.
Oh, sorry, homeless people, yes, homeless people, thank you, Honorable Member. Insofar as homeless people are concerned, we were called upon by the Department of Social Development to erect temporary structures in areas where they had identified. We had 5 of those. Many of the people in those 5 homeless people shelters, they have been reconnected with their people, but the provision of meals was the responsibility of the Department of Social Development. But what we did was to provide the temporary structures. So, but here in East London, we had one that was housed by the church, Assemblies of God Church, and then others are in King Williamstown. I am not sure whether perhaps the city manager can respond to this question about the rates increase that the Honorable Chair raised, if it is above the required standards. The IDP adoption has not been done because it is going to be done with the budget, and subsequent to the tabling of that in council, we are going then to start the process of consultation with the communities as the regulations dictate. Thank you, Chair.
City Manager, any other thing you want to add?
Yes, Chair. Yes, thank you, Chair. There's just 2 comments from me. I think the quarantine sites, we've got 3 quarantine sites. And I think the question was if they are owned by the municipality. 2 are owned by the municipality and 1 is owned by Public Works. So they're all government sites. They have approximately 180 beds combined. And there are regulations that are out, and also the Department of Health very clearly in terms of what must be provided in terms of meals, hygiene services, etc. So we will comply with all of them when we need to use them. And I think the one was on the financial and how are we funding our COVID expenditure. Also part of our team today is our CFO, Mr. Sakao. So with your permission, I think if you could just allow him just a few minutes just to tell us about the financial expenditure relating to COVID and how we are handling that.
Over to you, CFO.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. And good evening to the entire committee, the honorable members of the committee, as well as the leadership of PCMM.
Chair, we can't see them. We can't see them. They're not appearing on the screen.
Thank you, Chairperson. Just switched on my video.
So you can see him now, Mamkis.
Thank you very much.
Also put your face on the screen.
Yes, Chair, I can see him now.
Mr. Naidu? Yes, this is what, and stay there for a bit.
Thank you very much, Honorable Committee, to you, Chairperson. Starting with if I can just add on the issue of the adoption of the draft MTRF budget. I think it is important that we first reflect to the committee that we had an IDP budget process plan that was adopted by Council that we were implementing religiously. We had our draft budget being a plan to be adopted. I think it was around 26 or 27 of March in terms of our original draft MTRF ITP budget process. But because of the disaster that came in, and then the regulation that came in saying that all council sittings must be suspended, especially for councils that are having members that are above 50. And our council members is composed of 100 members, excluding the traditional councillors that are the traditional leaders that are sitting there, as well as administrative staff. So we could not sit as at the end of March as it was projected because of that. Then later on, the regulation kept on adopting, being updated, and as such, the issue of visual sitting was encouraged. We started to have our visual meeting to adopt the draft budget, which was scheduled for 27th of May. It was on a Wednesday. But unfortunately, in one of the areas that were identified for councillors to converge, which because our councillors now were spread across our 3 regions to ensure that we comply with the number of not exceeding the number of 50. Unfortunately, in one of the areas that they had converged, there was a case where one of the employees that work in that civic center, where the results came back saying that that employee was positive. Therefore, in terms of the regulation, if someone that is working in that work area has tested positive, then that area needs to be decontaminated and disinfected. Now, councillors felt unsafe in that area, in that civic center. Therefore, the meeting could not proceed. It had to be reconvened. That was the meeting of the 27th of May. That meeting had to be reconvened. That was on a Wednesday. It was reconvened for a Friday, which was the 29th of the May. Then on the 29th of May, our council again converged virtually to consider the draft MTRF budget. Unfortunately, they did not approve it. They decided that they want a workshop. A workshop was arranged again visually to again take them through the MTRF budget, which was then convened successfully on the 4th of June. That was done successfully. Therefore, after considering the inputs of councillors in the workshop, then the meeting was reconvened. That's the meeting now that is going to sit on Friday. I'm giving this history, Chair, just to demonstrate to the committee that it is not a disregard of the legislation by our city that we have not yet adopted the draft MTRF. We tried to comply, but the circumstances have forced us to the stage that we're in. But what is also important, Chair, that I want to raise is that we will request the assistance of national government in this trying time, because this is unprecedented in the history of our country, where we have these trying times and test to our legislation. We've got a legislation that is saying we need to at least publicize or consult our draft budget for 21 days. There's also a legislation on the property rates that is saying the consultation must happen at least for 30 days. That is not practical now in our situation. If you look, you do the counting, we're now on the 10th. Our council is going to sit on the 12th to adopt the draft budget. Therefore, the time that is left up to the end of the financial year, where in terms of the MFMA, you must adopt your final budget. It is not possible that we can consult for 30 days in terms of the property rates and or consult for 21 days in terms of the Systems Acts. And then those are all the competencies, those are the legislations that have been drafted and that are owned by COCTA. We met today with National Treasurer to present, to have our benchmarking exercise. They have advised that we must write to COCTA and request waiver in these time frames, because these are trying times, these are unprecedented times. And it is not the cities doing that we are not able to comply to the 30 days in terms of the Property Rates Act and the 21 days in terms of the Systems Act. Therefore, we request the national government to give leadership in this instance by allowing us to waive the consultation period so that we are able to comply with the 30 June that we must adopt our budget by. Therefore, it means then our consultation period must be reduced a bit. So I'm raising this to the committee so that they can take cognizance of the challenges that unfortunately the issue of the pandemic has brought as a challenge to our city. Then coming to the issue of how we are responding in terms of financial to the COVID issues as a city. Let me first indicate that when it comes to infrastructure-related matters, we received an additional 340 million from USTG from the National Department of Human Settlement. That funded to our normal programs. But in this instance, we said the full 340 million must be allocated to COVID-related matters. And what are those matters? Those matters are focusing in ensuring that we are dealing with issues of de-densification of the highly dense areas. That is the issue of provision of TRAs, the issue of provision of the issue of dealing with provision of water and sanitation, the issue of dealing with electrical power lines. So that whole 240 million that would normally be injected in the normal infrastructure of the municipality was dedicated to the COVID-related matters of the city. So that's how we have shifted our budget. But over and above that, We said in our own normal operating budget, let's adjust. We took 70% of our normal catering S&T budget. We stopped all our sponsorship budget that has not yet been allocated or issued to the people or beneficiaries, and said all that money must be redirected to COVID-related matters, so that it addressed the issue of the PPE, addressed the issue of the decontamination, addressed the issue of the desertification, addressed the issue of a plant hire, because we said in our city, no more that people must dig grave in the rural areas using picks and shovels, as the executive mayor has already reflected. Therefore, what did we put as a solution? We are hiring TLPs at the cost of the municipality. The beneficiaries or the communities are not paying for that service. That's the service that is paid by the city, hiring TLPs into all our 3 regions, in all our villages, digging graves for free and then backfilling. So that is costing money. That is accommodated by reallocating our operating budget, reprioritizing it. To date, we have spent above 36 million in that program. That is funded by our own funds, not conditional grants. To date, we have spent over 36 million. So that's a reflection of how we have prioritized our budget. As council will be meeting on Friday to adopt the MTRF draft budget, they will also be considering the draft budget, the adjustment budget that we've put together to reallocate funds to respond to the COVID matters. That is in line with the regulations, because the regulations are saying that that must be adopted by council before 15 June. So we will be taking that report to council so that they adopt the adjustment budget that is trying to reallocate our funds to respond to the COVID matters. Chair, the one or the second last issue that I want to respond to is the issue that talks to the increases that are sort of above the inflation. We agree to this matter, but unfortunately, when you are determining a tariff increase, there are a lot of factors that are taken into account. Unfortunately, the CPI rate is not necessarily a true reflection of what the input factors or the increased determining factors of the expenditure of the cost of living in that area is throughout the country. The 4.5% CPI in that the cost of living across the country is 4.5%. But unfortunately, that's an average that is used throughout the country that we need to comply. But there is a requirement in the National Treasury Regulation that is saying, when you are setting up your tariff or when you are determining your tariff increase, it must be cost reflective. That's what informed the tariffs increases that we're suggesting to our people. It's informed of the input costs that are informing the servicing of that tariff. We've presented this to National Treasury today. They were happy with how we demonstrated how we arrived in that increase, because it is not informed by anything other than the input factors. For example, I'll make an example. One of the key input factors is your fuel, which is always above the normal CPI. Secondly, if you talk electricity, one of the key input factors is the bulk purchases, that is the cost that we are paying to Eskom to get the supply. And that supply, in the past few years, it has always been way above inflation. Secondly, or in fact, thirdly, on water, that supply from the water authorities, e.g. in our instance, the Amatola water, has always been above the normal inflation. We always object when these are raised by NESA consulting us, we object. But unfortunately, NESA approved for Eskom, and also Department of Water and Sanitation approved for Amatola water. And therefore, we need to take that input cost. And there's nothing else that we can do if that input cost is above the inflation, is to pass that input cost further to the customer, which is the consumer. Unfortunately, that's the reality that we have to face on how unfairly the economics of our country are working. And then the last point, Chair, that I want to reflect on is the point that was raised around our billing issues. There are two issues, Chair, that are contributing to the escalation of our billing queries. One issue is the issue of meter reading. We have a challenge with meter reading that we are trying to address because we have high rate of interims. And the moment that you are billing or you are basing your billing on the interim, then the consumer is not happy because he will say, this is not the actual consumption. You have not read my consumption. So that's the first challenge that we are trying to address. But unfortunately, the lockdown period did not assist us because we have meter readers now that could not go out and read because of the lockdown, especially at level 5. We suspended all the meter reading at level 5 because we did not want to contravene the lockdown regulations. On level 4, we brought back our meter readers, then they started reading. But they still experience challenges where some of the consumers would not allow them to get into their properties to read the meters because they will say they are exposed to risk of being infected with COVID. Although all our meter readers were provided with PPE, they will go there having worn the gloves as well as the masks. So that's the challenge that we're experiencing. That's why the executive mayor as well, the acting city manager, in their presentation, they indicated that to try and circumvent this, we have introduced the rollout of the smart meters, because then with the smart meters, you don't need someone physically going out there to read the consumption of that meter. So that's one issue that is a challenge when it comes to the billing. The second issue is the one of the water restriction. Remember, our water restriction that we introduced as a council was to say, we will not restrict the consumption of water. We won't say to a consumer, you can only consume so many liters in a day. We said we won't do that, but we will restrict through charging punitive tariff. If we are consuming water more than what has been set as the normal standard by Department of Water and Sanitation of daily usage. In fact, it's not a daily usage, it's a monthly usage. We said then, if you consume more than 20 kiloliters, in fact, 20 kiloliters is way above, because the norm is 6 kiloliters. But we said our punitive tariff are starting to kick in at 20 kiloliters. If you spend more than 20 kiloliters, then you start to attract punitive tariff. That's a measure that we're putting to say, use water sparingly, because this is a scarce resource. This has raised quite an uprising, a number of queries, people saying, why our water bills have become so high? And it is mainly because of that. If you contain your water to remain 20 kiloliters and below, you will not have a surge. You will not have a spike in your water bill. But because most consumers are consuming more than that 20 kiloliters, therefore they are experiencing a spike and a surge. And then they regard this as a billing system problem. But in most instances, when they are taken through being explained as to what led to the spike, then they will understand. But I think, Chairperson, I must indicate that one of the challenges that we have is that our consumers have created businesses in their properties that are not registered. Because the reason why most of our property owners are consuming more than 20 kiloliters per day in their properties is because at the backyard, they've got people that are renting, whether in their servants' quarters or in their garden rooms or whatever you call it. They've got people that are renting. Therefore, you find that in a property, there are 2 or 3 households that are sitting there. Therefore, the allocation that is meant for one household is no longer accommodating one household. A victim of the
You see
punitive
now
tariff.
the network is even cutting.
Thank you, Chairperson. Let me stand down.
CFO, the network, it's a sign that you've been there for quite some time. I think you've
Thank you very much. Let me retire.
responded to. I hardly find CFO who talks the way you are talking who are so eloquent, because they normally deal with figures. But then I don't know. It's okay. Let's proceed, colleagues. I think there are questions that we didn't hear you responding to, Executive Mayor. The issue of the quarantine site that Honorable Mkalipi has raised. We'll share with you the video, but if indeed this is what is happening in your under your watch, then I think something has to be done. That's the issue that I feel it was not adequately responded to. Then there was the issue about the hospital, the live hospital, the live care hospital, the one that denied MPs and MEC entry to the hospital. This is a hospital within your area of jurisdiction. What is your comment on that one? Yeah, basically that's it. Honorable Bring, is there something that you want to quickly raise before they respond?
Chairperson, also the issue of illegal electrical disconnection, they didn't respond, Chairperson.
Okay, maybe it's the time I was stopping the CFO, he was coming to it. Honorable Brink, is there an issue you wanted to raise?
Yes, Chairperson. The gentleman from the municipality raised the issue of not being able to comply with the time periods in the Property Rates Act. And he asked the CFO, correct, Chairperson, and perhaps the Deputy Minister can assist us with that answer, because it's not just an answer for this municipality, potentially other municipalities are affected. And then, Chairperson, if the Deputy Minister can just answer as well the question raised about what is the progress with financial support for municipalities affected by the lockdown. Thank you.
Executive Mayor.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. The issue of quarantine sites, it was responded to by the acting city manager. We said the combined capacity is 180 beds, but he can further elaborate on the 2 questions that are remaining. Thank you, Chair.
Chairperson.
Executive Mayor. The issue was found there before the city manager. Maybe the city manager will deal with it. The Reef B&B, you are aware of that facility?
That B&B will be visited, Chair. We'll have to go and visit there to verify. No,
treatment and the videos that are being circulated on that, on the treatment. Okay. Mr. Naidu?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I did give a response on the quarantine. We've got 3 sites. Those are public-owned sites, 2 of which are owned by the municipality. They have a capacity of 180. But I think the question is on those quarantine sites that are not owned by the municipality. I think they are privately owned, and either social services or Department of Health procure their services. But the Mayor did allude to that, to say it's in our municipal area. We'll have to go and visit. We haven't seen those videos. We'll have to go and visit and check what's happening in terms of the non-compliance, and then take the necessary action with those quarantine sites.
They're still there.
Yeah.
At least the head of the National Disaster Management Center is also in this meeting. The point we are raising, every quarantine ministry, whether private or public or yours, you should know how many quarantine sites are there. Because then the question that arises, what are you discussing in your district command council if you don't know how many quarantine sites the department put? Because remember, the district command council brings everybody on board. So you should be able to account for all quarantine sites and be able to tell us this so many belongs to who, whatever. But I mean, as a municipality, and then the executive mayor being the chair of the district command council, we expect you to know these things. But basically, that's it. Proceed. You wanted to respond to the other issues.
I think the one was on the electrical disconnections. Mayor did respond to that on the electrical disconnections. We are only disconnecting those who have illegally connected. Yeah, who have illegally connected. And that is because of the impact it has on our infrastructure, electrical infrastructure. And also the danger it poses also to the communities when it is illegally connected. All other connections and disconnections we have suspended. So we're not doing any disconnections in terms of if people are not paying, etc., that we disconnect. That all has been suspended, and we put on hold our credit control policy so that we make sure people have access to service. So it's only where it is illegally done and it has an impact of our infrastructure, also in terms of danger and safety to the community. I dealt with the quarantine. The life care, I think, Chair, you say where the MEC was not allowed. We'll have to look into that as well. And that is a private hospital, but it's in our district. We have to check what's happening there. I think that was just today that happened. I think, yeah, that's, and then I think we will, yeah, I think those are the three issues. Thank you very much, Chair.
Chair.
Liza? Yes.
Again, there's a lingering question that was asked by my colleague. You know, we are going to skip it because it's vitally important to look at the root causes of these things and how the city should be seen to be putting measures in place in terms of eradicating the root cause before they scratch the surface in terms of disconnection. My colleague says that the root cause of these things, of these illegal connections, are as a result of socio-economic conditions. So how is it that the city is addressing that? Because to an extent, some of the issues pertaining to inavailability of water tanks are as a result of spatial development, are as a result of neglect of rural or local communities. So I want to ask to urge the city to really provide us with the relevant details in terms of the root causes. How are they addressed? Because we are quite cognizant and alive to the fact that the root cause of crime, if I may use that example, is as a result of the manner in which people are socialized, are orientated, is a result of inequalities. Once you can address the equalities, then you can address the actual behaviors that are emanating as a result of the root cause itself. Thank you, Chair.
MM and CFO.
Chair.
You respond, or you want to deal with that, Executive Mayor?
Yes,
Sure.
I should deal with that question, Chair.
Okay.
Chair, I think we all know that with the collapse of influx control rules and apartheid, people became free to live wherever they wanted to live. People come to the cities in search of greener pastures. Now, that which we call inward migration, this town of ours, this city of ours is in the proximity of rural communities. As and when people do not have anything to sustain their livelihoods, they will leave to seek greener pastures elsewhere, and the cities are a better place to accommodate people because people are of the view that their conditions would improve for the better once they come to the cities. Now, there is it's a national challenge of inward migration, which is informed by the socio-economic challenges that people are confronted with where they live. We can only be able to undo that if we can be able to create a conducive economic environment where people live so that they don't migrate. The second response to the same question, Chair, is the fact that the right of people to live. These illegal connections are very dangerous to the very same people. They are maiming children. Children cannot play because of this illegal connection over and above the economic losses that we suffer as a result of this. Now, we do not have sufficient resources to connect all our informal settlements at once. We are doing that. We are now looking at applying for the grant that is meant for that purpose, so that we are gradually electrifying our informal settlements, but we are not doing it at a mass scale because of insufficient resources that we have. So those are the two considerations. The one is economic, the one is on the right to life of the people. People should not be maimed by electric shocks that arises out of the illegal connections. Thank you very much.
Also, Dolo.
DM, can we get a response from the Department of Culture on the support, on the current state of financial support to municipalities?
Thank you, Chairperson, and also to Mayor Pagati and the team, and to Salga also represented, and all honorable members. And the officials of the department are also in attendance. So, Chair, I will just give a few responses, and then the other details will be filled in by DDG Fosi, who is also in attendance. Firstly, obviously, we are all aware that there's this 20 billion rand relief as part of the COVID-19 response for the municipalities. The minister has consulted widely, and we have already composed on it in terms of what will be the relief all about to help the municipalities. And once it is appropriated by Parliament, which is due very soon this month, and the ministers will then be giving the details in terms of what is the support relief that is going to be going to the municipalities. So the part of the 20 billion rand, already we have looked at it, and it will be the type of the financial support we give to the municipalities. Secondly, the DDG Force will then tell about the repurposing of the mix as to what is that program entailing. It's also going to be enable municipalities to then begin to look at MIG to respond to COVID, but also help municipalities go through this very difficult situation of the COVID, so that even in the post-COVID, we could still see municipalities performing their duties and providing services. And the other one that we will also speak about is the reprioritization of the budget, particularly for those municipalities that did not spend money as the year is ending, the financial year is ending, how to repurpose that and engaging with the National Treasury, that money be not recalled, but be available to those municipalities to then respond to the issues that COVID is presenting on us, on challenges, and see how the municipalities can then begin to use it also to help their financial situation. And on the issues of the timeframes on the public property rates and then on then the IDP processes, Themba Fosi will then give the processes, how far it is and how we've been guiding the municipalities. So with your indulgence, Chair, I will then ask Themba Fosi to be allowed to speak. Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay, thank you. DG Fosi.
Thank you, Chairperson, Honorable Chair, and good evening to the honorable members. And honorable, thank you, Chair. Chair, on the issue of the tariffs as it relates to the property rates, the provision that the exemption that Treasury has provided in terms of the extension of the deadline for adoption of budget, the understanding is that issues of tariffs will be part of that budget process. So municipalities would have been provided for in terms of adoption of their budget in line with also the tariffs involved. If the CFO was referring to issues of evaluation of properties and the objections that people then, there's a timeline that they are given to do that. But as it relates to the adoption of the budget and tariffs, I think that is provided for within the timelines that have been set in terms of the budget process. So the IDP process will be aligned to that process. The issue of the reprioritization, Chairperson, of the grants at a national level, working with the Treasury, we have broadly agreed that in the context of the grants, in context of COVID, all the grants will need to be reprioritized and repurposed so that they can respond to the COVID emergencies. So already in the as it relates to the municipal infrastructure grants, which the city would not be receiving because it's a metro, we have already provided broadly beyond what the current framework of MIG provides for to accommodate areas such as deep cleansing of public spaces, which ordinarily would not be provided for as part of the framework, because the framework of the grants was largely about capital infrastructure funding. But now in the context of COVID, we've given a leeway for municipalities to reprioritize and assist them to respond to COVID. And that would apply also to the USDG, which the CFO also referred to the amount that they've reprioritized as the city to fund their COVID responses. So broadly, that's the process. As it relates to MIG, it's about 1.4 billion of unspent funds that we have actually reprioritized. Even when municipalities will be adopting their budgets, we've also given them an ability to reprioritize even the grants for the next financial year to respond to COVID. So that those guidelines have been provided to all municipalities to also respond to COVID-related expenditures. Chair, I think broadly these are some of the key issues. I might have missed some that the TM raised, but let me stop there. Thanks, Chair.
I think you adequately responded to the questions. Colleagues, it's 8 minutes to knock off time. Is there any other matter that you feel it has not been adequately responded to?
Honorable Chair.
Yes.
Yes, the one issue, the tools of trade for councillors. The mayor indicates that councillors must be gathered in 3 separate venues. Is he implying that not all councillors have the gadgets required for them to conduct visual meetings at their respective places? Do they have to gather in a community hall for the meetings to proceed? Is that what I understood the mayor to be saying?
Chair. No, Chair. The councillors of the city have their tools of trade. But it happens that sometimes they choose to be in one space. This happens out of their own choosing. So they split, they go to King Williamstown Civic Center, but they make sure that they are below the required number in terms of the regulations. But this is not informed by the fact that they do not have tools of trade. It is informed by choice, Chair.
Chair, I'm sorry to make a dialogue, but why then is the meeting cancelled when a venue has been identified to have been having 2 positive patients? If that's the case, why was the meeting cancelled? Because it does not mean those tools of trade cannot be operated at my private residence.
The cancelling of the meeting is unrelated to the existence of the tools of trade. If you want us to discuss the cancelling of the meeting, let's have that debate separately. But it is not informed by councillors not having the tools of trade.
Honorable Chair, I don't think the Honorable Mayor is doing justice. Yes, to the question that I'm asking.
I think, can we get it clear, Executive Mayor? All councillors have got laptops with data allocated to them by council. They have the tools of trade. That's the question, including cell phones.
The councillors, in terms of they have cell phones, they have data allowance.
Yes.
They have airtime provided by the municipality.
So then it makes it possible for virtual meetings to be held.
Yes, Chair.
Held. Yes.
Yes,
okay.
Chair.
Then I think let's end it here.
Chairperson, before you end it here.
1 minute.
Yeah. Yes, Chairperson, I think that on the issue of illegal electrical disconnection, I heard the response of the mayor, but I think that we must also say to the mayor, please look at this issue because it's a cause for concern. If approximately 1,950 people are on the verge of being disconnected, and the mayor does not, or the city does not have a clear program of how to address this issue, it's well a cause for concern. So we are appealing to the city under the leadership of the executive mayor to look at this issue and probably to have an intervention strategy for these people to survive. Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay.
Chairperson, can I just quickly help on one issue?
Sure.
Hello? Yeah, on the issue of the council meetings, obviously the regulation says that they must be using visual platforms. However, there has been issues raised by certain councillors that connectivity is a challenge, particularly those rural municipalities where connectivity is a challenge. The protocols does allow for those councillors to meet in one room, big screen. However, the social distancing, masks, and sanitization will then have to be in place. It's only when they do have challenges of connectivity that is allowed also within the protocols. Thank you.
And they must not exceed 50, am I wrong? And they must not exceed 50 in number, because with the metro, they've got over 100 councillors.
Definitely, Chair, you are right.
Sure.
Thank you, DM. Thank you. That's progressive.
The last point, Chair, can I see my friend Stembiso Kanyile there? He's a friend of mine. That must stay, Chairperson.
Hey, Stembiso, show your face as I'm closing. It's Stembiso and Nkonki. You don't just come and leave without showing your face. There are two. It can't be Stembiso alone.
Yes, yes.
There's Siavonga Nkonki as well.
Must stay, please. Let us see your face.
Colleagues, there's a request by the Honorable MP. Can you show your faces, Stembiso, GM, Kanyile, and the Operation Manager? Zoom in your videos as I'm closing.
There is it.
The executive mayor is laughing like hell. I don't know what's happening.
This interest all about.
I wonder why is this interest? I wonder why is there interest?
Can they show their faces? I want to close the meeting. Can you talk?
Okay, CFO, come.
No, CFO has already done that. It's Mr.
He's done that.
No,
Okay.
Mr. Stembiso Kanyile, that's the one that where is he?
He's right there.
I'm here. Mr. Mayor, why are you quiet?
We can't see you. Show your face. And others.
Councillor May.
Yes, I'm here. Greetings.
Why are you so quiet?
Wow.
Why are you so quiet, comrade?
I need to close this meeting.
I can talk a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Close it, Chair. Honorable
Let
Mkhandisi must give your call.
Let me confirm the attendees of the meeting, because Ndabezita will also call somebody to show the face now. I see Honorable Show in
we were there in the trenches with the beach.
Can I close the meeting? Is it
Close
on the screen?
You jumped the trenches.
Honorable Show, Honorable Mpumza,
yes.
Honorable Pritika Vanchava, Honorable Lutuli, Honorable Esilias Brink, Honorable Hadebe, Honorable Khanya Keza, Honorable Hussein, and Honorable Mkalipi, and Honorable Opperman. Those were the attendees of this meeting. DM, want to thank you once more for making time all the time to attend these meetings whenever you are available. We sincerely appreciate this. To the executive mayor and the team, in particular also Councillor May, you have been asked to show your face by Honorable Mpumza. We want to thank you together with the management team I think we'll continue to engage with you. Time permitting, we are planning an oversight. We might also come and visit you in your municipality, depending on the time that we'll have. We'll continue to engage with you. And now that you are also an epicenter identified as a hotspot, we'll time and again call you to come back and report to us as a committee. But nevertheless, we want to thank you for your time and also having had the opportunity to respond to all the questions as raised by the colleagues. We sincerely appreciate you. Then this meeting gets adjourned. Thanks to you two colleagues.
Bye-bye, Chair.
From Kalipi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Executive Mayor.
Thank you,
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
At least somebody is calling the executive mayor's name. That's Mam Kize. So okay.
Thank you, Chair.
It's balanced.
Bye-bye, Chichi. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye, Mayor. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
That bye-bye to the mayor, I don't know.
Thank you.
Bye-bye to the mayor.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, Chair.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Mam Kiza na mayor. Mam Kiza, with this mayor, it's a problem.
No. Hayibo. Lo mntwana uyasebenza eMkhaliphi.
Hayibo, kunini ukhuluma ngale?
Hayi uyasebenza Shem, uyazi uyasebenza ngisho nabantu bakhe basekuhlaleni abangeyona le-ANC bayakutshela ukuthi hayi cha lo meya wethu uyasidilivela.
Mam Kiza.
Ngidiployiwe lapho ngiyayazi imisebenzi yalo muntu. Yena ngimazi kodwa imisebenzi yakhe ngiyayazi.
Wena Mkhaliphi fakele isibuko nalo kanyilo befuna veve la.
Hayi bo comrade wami loyo.
Oh, yeah. Uzakhamuta ngalo comrade wakho. Ufuna veve lapha platform.
Nawu nomlungu wakho nje uthaveza umlungu wakho.
Umlungu wami comrade yami.
Manje lesifana wami uyasebenza lo mfana madoda hayi.
Ukuthi abantu bakhe
hayi uyasebenza man Titi. Yabona lo meya lo uyasebenza Eastern Cape. Hayi.
Abasebenza lo meya.
Uphume usebenzayo.
Uxoxelwa abantu basekuhlaleni.
Ekizo.
Hello ma.
Uyabona nje Mamkhize.
Uphuma umuntu osebenzayo bi-corruption ingaka
no council umeyi
uyasebenza ke bakithi akekho kulo corruption
muhle mengahlangene corruption siyambongela
hayi akekho kulo corruption lo hayi akekho corruption yabona Mkhaliphi ngingahamba nawe ngiye nawe lapha
okay sozwa ke Khizo kodwa